Hello everybody and welcome to another demo from MicroStrategy. The topic of today is derived elements. Again, we're doing the development, everything from the desktop or the developer, and we will focus on the derived element types, formatting, subtotaling, and utilization. So let's dig in and create a demo. Now here what I did is I created a couple of reports to be used. Let me show you the report that I created that we're going to use. So let's run this report so we can see what we're going to use. So this is a report that has states, a facility type or location, and two metrics. These are called number of jobs and number. And so this is a shipping report that we're going to look into with different counts for jobs and containers, etc. Notice that my data is at the level of the state, so the facility component is irrelevant. So let's take that off for now. Alright, so this makes more sense here. Okay, so let's say I want to create a derived elements where I can utilize some of the items here and group them together or calculate them together or filter on them differently. So let's play with this and see where we go. So what does a derived element do? It allows you to group things just like a consolidation. It also allows you to filter things or bundle things by filter just like a view filter does. And it lets you do advanced or in the data set some calculations on the fly. Okay, so there's three things. Now one critical thing for everybody to remember when you're using derived elements: these do not impact the SQL. These are after the SQL has generated the report. You are simply using the analytical engine to slice and dice your report. You are no more going back to the database. So what does this mean? This means the report can be a part of a dashboard or a document, or based on an intelligent cube. If you want to create derived elements off a standalone, you will have to use the OLAP service with the web, not through the desktop. So here's a report, right? So typically, if this was based on a intelligent cube or embedded within a document, when you right click here, you will see an option that says derived elements. You will not see that in a standalone report. Okay, so this is the report we're going to use. I'm going to save and close it. I'm going to use it as a data set in a document. Okay. Furthermore, I'm going to show you an example with intelligent cubes, which is no different. So what do we need to do to make this an intelligent cube? Let me just delete these here and recreate them. That might be easier for people to understand what I'm talking about. So here's the report. I am going to run it. Okay, I'm going to go to edit, and I'm simply going to convert it into an intelligent cube. There we go. Yes, yes, yes. Done. Save and close. Save it by default name. There it is. I'm going to run it. Let's generate the cube. Boom, boom. We're done. Close. I'm going to create a copy of our data set. I'm going to call it intelligent cube IC. I'm going to edit it. And I'm going to point it to our intelligent cube. Okay, great. Save and close. Alright, so now I have the data set that we started with and a data set based on intelligent cube from that data set. Okay, so one is intelligent cube based and one is just simple report. I want to create a dashboard to use that simple report, so we can run two examples simultaneously. So I'm going to create a dashboard, simple dashboard, nothing fancy. Base it on that data set, not the intelligent cube one, just the regular data set. And let's see, where did we go? We are in public objects. Here we go. Let's use the data set. Alright, and I'm going to embed this with formatting. Nothing fancy. I'm going to save and close. Okay. So I have a dashboard based on this data set. I have an intelligent cube created from this data set. I have a report that uses the intelligent cube. So this one and this one are where we can play with the derived elements. So as you realized, a dashboard has an OLAP cube based on a report, on a data set or a report. A intelligent cube report is based on a cube, so it has that OLAP component that allows you to do things on the fly. So let's hide the two parts that we don't care to create elements from. I'm just going to hide their properties so we can differentiate what we're talking about. Alright, so now we're left with the intelligent cube and the dashboard. Let's edit one at a time and create derived elements. Let's use this one. Let me run it. Okay, here we go. So let's say I want to bundle up these three states in one region. Hypothetically, I mean, this might not make sense, but let's do something more reasonable. So let's do South Carolina and North Carolina. Let's just call them the Carolinas. I'm going to right click, derived element. I'm going to create a new list. Okay, so this is the default name. Let's expand the editor. I'm going to create a list based on South Carolina, okay, and North Carolina. Great. So I'm going to rename this list. Let's look at the property. Again, expand a little bit more. All right. Let's rename here and rename it to Carolinas. Okay. Now what's in all other? Well, guess what? It's going to be everything else. And we can edit that and change it. Okay. So let me save this and say OK. Alright, here we go. Here's the Carolinas. And notice South Carolina and North Carolina are gone. Their totals are bundled up. Okay? Let's edit this derived element. We can edit it from here or from here. There we go. So let's see what we want to do. We want to change the property from consolidate to keep individual separate. What does it do? It breaks them down into two pieces. Okay? So you can, even though you have a derived element on state, you can go back and forth and display and bundle and unbundle, whatever. Okay? So let's keep it as a bundle, consolidate, and let's just save that for now. Okay? Let's create a new element. This one, we're going to do something a little bit more fancy. Let's create a new, okay? Let me rename it and call it states that start with letter F. Okay? Now, for this state, or for this to happen, we need to change the type to a calculation. Okay, I made a mistake. I should have created it from here first. So let me delete this and delete this. So first, instead of creating a new, by default I have to select a calculation or a filter. So let's create a filter. Now I can rename it to states with letter S, F. Let's just say begin with for clarity. Now here's the property manager. This is just like a view filter. So I'm going to say state where or in list, but let's do a where filter where the description begins with type of value. Let's do S or F. Let's see what this does for us. Okay. Here it is. Notice how many states starts with the letter F? Probably 1. Okay, so let's go and look at and let's edit it. And let's see what it says here. Summary. Okay, so let's change the property on this guy and say keep individual. And now let's see what happens. There it is, Florida. So we only had 1 state. So in this case it wasn't necessarily the best example. But let's see the M. M, we have a lot of states with M. So let's edit that derived element. You can click anywhere and edit the derived elements. Okay, you don't have to be specific. And here we go. Just change this from F to M. Okay. Let's see, where did we go? Here we go. Let's see. Let's go to the bottom and see what happened. Okay, remember we said display individual items. We never changed it. So it bundled them up. It displayed them individually at the end. But if we want to consolidate them, simply go to the property and consolidate. Okay, here you got to select the one. Consolidate. Okay, let's see what happens now. And there. So next question is, why is it at the end? Well, let me show you how order is important. So let's go to derived elements. We should have renamed it because we did change it to M. Okay, and how do we know that? You can just double click here and see the condition. See this? This says Carolina's first, all other, then states with M. That's why it was at the end. But if we bump it up, put it on the top, and okay, see, now it'll rerun. Here we go, M, Carolinas, then everything else. So you get the idea how we're mixing and matching between a list, we combine two, between a filter where we combine all the ones with M. Now there's one more thing that we can do with derived elements. Create a new one. Let's add a calculation. So a calculation can get a little tricky because you need to use the formula right here. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so you can use things like add, average, minus, plus. It's kind of limited. Okay, so it's not the best, but it becomes very handy. Now, why is it limited? Because you're really using the cube. Okay, so let's do something like add. Okay. Alright, so we don't need the editor to tell us how to add. We just can do this. Let's just do Illinois plus Pennsylvania. Okay? Alright, let's just do one more thing. Let's do minus Alabama and see what happens. Okay? So we got a little funky calculation going on here. It really doesn't make sense here. But we're just using it to illustrate what we're doing. Property, let's keep them consolidated. And I'll rename this I plus P minus A. Don't want to go into the details about it, okay? So we're just using it as an example. See what happened. There it is, I. So now we also created a derived element that's not a group, a list, that is not based on a filter, but takes one element, another element, and a third element, and totals or adds them in the manner that we decided in that formula, where we added one to the next state and we subtracted Alabama from it. So there you go, the 3 types of derived elements. Okay. So one more thing that I want to talk about is besides the sorting, is highlighting elements and displaying them in the sort. So let's go back. We saw an option there. Let's go back to the derived element quickly. There was a property selection that said, do you want to use this element when calculating subtotals? So this element that created, letters begin with M, we can keep it as part of the subtotal for the report. We can use the individual items that make this element when calculating the subtotal, or we do not use it at all. Okay? So let me tell you where this becomes critical. In this one here, if we added this in the calculation subtotal, it'll drop Alabama from your total. Okay? So if you intend your subtotal of your report to drop this, not just this element to drop this, then you use this calculation with the subtotal. But if you really are just doing this a one-off row, but you still want your total to be the total of all the states in this case, we want to say is that, well, use the individual. Don't use the formula that I created. And in that way, when you do this, and you add a subtotal to your report, let's just do a total, okay? And let's look at this total. Total was, let me just bring it up. Okay, the total was 100,000 and 800 million, okay? But if I change the, remember this number, now I'm going to change it to, for this formula, change that property, instead of individual to use it, I should expect Alabama to drop out, and there we go. There's a 10,000 number difference because that state Alabama now was taken into consideration. This formula was considered, and it had a minus here, so it dropped it out of the subtotal. So obviously this will open a lot of ideas for many of you developers. Say, now I can do something like this, or I can be a little fancy about my totals and modify my subtotals and play with them. It gives you a lot of power. This is just basically scratching the surface with derived elements, but it gives you an idea how they work. Okay, so I promised you one more thing to show you how they work with data sets of documents. So let me save this and close it, get out of it. Here's a, if you want to edit it in the dashboard, you can also edit derived elements here. Okay, you just have to edit. Okay, and then you can do derived elements just like we showed you earlier. Same thing, you create new lists, calculations, and filters, etc. Okay, so you have that power as well. And finally, you can also create a derived element outside the report. So you can just create the derived element first. Say, okay, my derived element wants to, I want it to be based on, let's see, public objects, derived elements. Okay, sorry. Dashboard. And let's see, map, facility, or state. And then you can start creating your derived elements. List, calculation, filter. Some people prefer to use it outside, just because the ability to do a little bit more, maybe. So here, formula, list, etc. So what it gives you here is the ability to reuse items and do more with them. So if I created something like 2 states, adding 2 states, and saved it and closed it, then I can, instead of just being limited to using it in that report that I created it, I can actually reuse it outside. But just just give you an idea here about these derived elements. You could also, here in your derived elements, you could delete and you can save. And you can save a derived element as an independent element. So you could start building it inside the report and then save it outside, build it outside, and then pull it in. When you pull it in, you just pull it in from the report objects. You browse, you find it wherever folder it is, you bring it in. So either way you can do that, and you can also link, and you can link it to other elements. So you can have one derived element out there that reuses a derived element. So you don't necessarily have to just use your different attributes. You could also reuse a derived element. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let's link this to that standalone. Okay, so here it is. I embedded one in the other, but instead of or I replaced one with another because I linked it. So this one now is linked to the other one externally, and obviously I lost my my different groups because now it is a shortcut to that one, but I don't want to do that, so let's cancel and keep the ones we have. I'm going to also show you one last thing. Let me edit this. And in that list, let's edit that list, Carolinas. Okay, let me go down here. And instead of unused, I'll keep all. Okay. And let's just see. Okay. So here, if I add a few more, oops. All right. It's important that what I can do with these, I can reorder things. So let's say I want to order them with N or S, N, N, A. So when I reorder them here, and I go to the properties, and I list individual items, sorry, not here, keep individual items, okay, this is an ordered group. See, S, N, N, A. So what does that mean? That means I can use a derived element not just for bundling things, but I created a group for these 4 states, okay, and I ordered them the way I want, and I displayed them individually. What did I achieve? I simply created a customized sort on part of my elements, okay? So that's also an advantage of using derived elements, or one other way to use derived elements. Finally, you can also edit derived elements from the web for your reports as well, not only the desktop, but this is what we're doing here in the desktop, which is more relevant for a developer. And every attribute that you create a derived element of will have this sign, so this one does not, obviously, and here it has. So if you add this to your report, like here, you can also bundle up and start creating derived elements for this new element. Let me show you this quickly. So here we go, new slate, new list, blah blah blah, and you start creating your groups again. So you can create multiple derived elements, each on a different attribute within your data set. Again, it has to be on the data set before you create the derived element for it. Okay, thank you very much, and tune in to the next video.